Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Saturday morning to you. Oh boy. Top of the morning, everyone. Special thank you to our many supporters who have been keeping us going throughout the year. Today we're having a very pointed conversation about minority business enterprise, about Black business, about the whole MBE program here in Baltimore, throughout the state of Maryland, and nationally. We have guests coming on today who will help provide insight, information that you may not find anywhere else. I hope that you are doing well. And on that note, if it's okay with you, I'd like to start off with a brief moment of silence and a few words of prayer. For all of those people that we've lost through COVID and other means, we pray for their souls. We also thank God for another day. We pray that we can use this day to make the best of our situation, no matter what. These and all other blessings we ask in your name. Amen. So, I kind of go back to my daddy. My daddy said, always thank the Lord. And so, years ago, there was a man named Perrin J. Mitchell. He was a congressman here in the city of Baltimore. And I'm going to give you some specifics. He created a program, and Bob DeShields, one of our speakers, will get heavily into this, as to the history of MBE programs. We're talking about MBE, it's minority business enterprise. Some people prefer the term Black business. But the current 8A program is the result of the merger of two distinct types of federal programs, those seeking to assist small businesses in general, and those seeking to assist racial and ethnic minorities. Now, let me just say, we hate using the term minority. Good morning, Rico. We hate the term minority. But for the next 4 weeks, I'm going to ask you to suffer it to be so. When I think of one of my mentors, Walter Edwards, New York City, heavily involved with the Black Business Economic Commission, he despises the term minority. Why? Because although Black people are a minority in the United States, we make up 13% of the population. There are those of us who understand that internationally, it's impossible for Blacks to be a minority. We're the majority, people of color. And that really helps change one's perspective, because a lot of us just don't know our numbers worldwide. But best believe if you're of color, you are of the majority. Only in America are you a minority. So be that as it may, we will go into some of the challenges, but also, more importantly, some of the solutions. Here in the city of Baltimore, every Wednesday, they have the Board of Estimates meeting. The Board of Estimates meeting is where millions and millions of dollars in contracts are doled out. But what we find is too often Black businesses are not the prime contractors. So we're going to go through, and another one of our speakers, Tamara Brown, is going to help us with a vocabulary list. Yes, this is Contractors College, and we want to educate, we want to enlighten, we want to inform. And to best do that, we have to get some terminology, just like back in school. We got to have a vocabulary list. It will include minority business enterprise, women's business enterprise, procurement, what's the term? Compliance, that's the term, compliance. You can have all of the rules in the world saying we got to give Black businesses this, we got to give Black businesses that. But if your legislation doesn't have any teeth, it's irrelevant. It means nothing. It's got to have bite. It's got to have a way of holding people accountable. I've been involved in this business fight in terms of advocacy for quite some time, going back to when we first started Be More News 2002. Black business has always been important to us. It is how many of us eat. The life of an entrepreneur is nothing easy. It's not for the faint at heart. It's all day, every day. No vacations. Seems like it. So as we get closer to 10 o'clock and we'll start bringing some of our speakers on board, we hope that you, number one, you need an ink pen or a keyboard for you to type on, and also something to write with. Special thank you to those people who have helped put this event together. And again, I hope that you have your ink pens, have your notebooks, because we want you to learn. We want you to grow your business. We want you to get opportunities, not just here in the city of Baltimore, but throughout the state of Maryland, nationally. And we will even be talking about some international opportunities. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. If you have any suggestions, or if you have any guest speakers, do let us know. Let me put my contact information up there in case anyone should have some ideas for this show or for down the road. You can just email us at editor@BlackUSA.News. Yes, we do still run BeMoreNews.com, but we've also expanded nationally. COVID has, we've tried to take advantage of this downtime of COVID to expand our horizons, and so that we can talk with other businesses in other states. One of our speakers today will be representing the African American Chamber of Commerce in Oakland. We're really excited about that. This woman she's a board member on the Oakland African American Chamber. She's an engineer and she's an accountant. And my question is, what question can we not ask her? What question is this lady not prepared for? So that's going to be very exciting. Our first speaker is Baltimore City Council President Nick Mosby. And while the mainstream media has been trying to give him some flack, I can tell you that Mr. Mosby, Mr. President, has been pushing the envelope for Black business at the Board of Estimates meeting. Again, that's every Wednesday at 9 o'clock. It is the meeting here in the city of Baltimore where contracts are doled out and where we need our Black leaders, because we have 3 Black men, Black mayor, Black council president, Black comptroller, who are 3 of the 5 members. And whatever those 3 push will most likely happen. And they are pushed as we push them. They work for us. We voted for them. We pay for them with our taxes. So therefore, we have a voice. And a part of this platform is making sure our voice is heard. Again, if you have any ideas, we want to hear from you. Just email us at editor@BlackUSA.News. And while we have a minute, let me just put a plug in for this company right here, Citywide Youth Development. This young man, Rashid Aziz, very proud of the brother. He went on to, along with his young people, build a $3 million manufacturing facility, aiming to be the hub of fashion manufacturing right here in West Baltimore, just a few blocks from where Freddie Gray unfolded back in 2015. So recently they just opened their brand new facility. It is the home of Made and Be More clothing and the home of Frozen Desert Sorbet. If you have a chance, please go through the 2100 block of West North Avenue. He has the building that was the old Penn Candy, but they've done a couple $1 million worth of renovations. The place is absolutely beautiful. Little Melvin was there in his final chapter, but I'm sure if he were alive, he would be very proud of what's been taking place right there in the heart of West Baltimore, 2132 West North Avenue. My grandma lived right around the corner, right around on Westwood and Pulaski. Also, if you don't know, we have shows every evening, 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. On Monday night is Town Hall. On Tuesdays, it's Party Marty, Let's Talk. Wednesday night, we do Sister Biz. Thursday night, we have Justice Connection. And let me tell you, the Justice Connection, this young lady, Keisha Brown, she's got it going on. I call it Justice Connection. It's the Black Lawyers Round Table. And on Friday nights, we have Fatima with the Caring Nurse. And each week, Fatima brings on different speakers who can educate us, inform us, enlighten us on how to provide hospice. I don't know if you've ever been in that situation of having to take care of a loved one, a parent, a grandparent. It's not easy. And the mental support, a friend of mine is dealing with his aging parent now. And I try to check on him, try to give him encouragement, let him know he's not alone, you know, hear him out when he has to vent. And that's something that we all can do, you know. Doesn't cost a lot, just your time. Again, welcome to the Contractors College. My name's Donnie Glover. We're very, very excited to have this platform finally happen. A lot of people are anticipating what dynamic speakers we have, what information we have available. And we're very pleased to bring it to you. We've got speakers coming from East, from West, from the North, from the South. So we're just waiting on our first speaker to show up. Meanwhile, we have already covered the federal 8A program. That's a current 8A program. And this was developed by people like Baltimore's own Congressman Perrin J. Mitchell. And the current program is the result of a merger of two distinct types of federal programs seeking to assist small businesses in general and those seeking to assist racial and ethnic minorities. Once you get into this program, here's another caveat. Be at least 51% owned and controlled by a U.S. citizen who is socially and economically disadvantaged, have a personal net worth of $750,000 or less. I think we can make that. Adjusted gross income of $350K. I think we can make that or less. And $6 million or less in assets. I think we can deal with that. So if you are interested in federal contracts, let me just tell you the 8A Business Development Program by the SBA is something that you want to listen to. Now that's on the federal level. Part of our focus here today will be what's happening on the local level, because that's important too. You know, the more Black contractors we can get work, the more they will be able to pay and hire Black people to work for them. And the more Black people working, that means the less Black people you have not working. Idle mind is a devil workshop. So to give us an overview, to share some insight, we're going to bring up this young lady, Tamara Brown. Unmute yourself there, my friend.
Good morning.
How are you? You're looking quite vivacious.
Well, thank you. It's not early.
No, it's not. How are you? Are you ready to get started? We've already had prayer and bless the Lord, had a moment of silence, but we want to get into the meat and potatoes. We want to help empower our businesses, and not just locally, but statewide, nationally. I was briefly discussing the federal 8A program. But let me just ask you, why is there a minority business enterprise program? Why do we need one, Tamara?
So you were talking about the 8A program, which is a federal program. And I did send you some slides with some details about that. that allows prime contracting. But because there's been a disparity in contracting with minority businesses, and once a disparity is found, there's discriminatory practices in the government or with subcontracting, then MBE and WBE programs are pretty much mandated or required to make up for that, the discriminatory practices.
Okay, so keep going. I'm going to try to
Okay.
do my part over here and load this slide. Well, let me ask you. You were once the MBE chief. What is that office respond? Is that in your slide presentation too?
So because this is a national program, we're kind of talking generally, but in general, every state and local government does have some sort of MBE or DBE, which is a disadvantaged business enterprise or minority business enterprise program that focuses on providing opportunities for minority or women-owned businesses because of those disparities in contracting overall.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so the office is mandated with. Okay.
No, please.
Yeah, so the offices are mandated with certifying the businesses, ensuring that they are a disadvantaged or a minority or a woman-owned business, and each designation has different requirements. But in general, it's owned by 51% either a veteran. There's veteran programs in the federal system, disabled veteran programs. There's woman-owned programs, minority, disadvantaged programs. It just depends on what type of program you're trying to get into. So those offices generally certify the businesses, and they tend to have oversight on the contracts to ensure that they're meeting the goals.
So why is this program of importance to you?
Well, to me, we're in Baltimore City, and I have a passion for the program. You know, Baltimore City is known for having a lot of crime, and our unemployment rate is a lot higher than the rest of the state. And so, in order to improve, you know, we're a minority heavy city, we're majority minority. And in order to improve those negative statistics, you have to provide opportunity. And there's clearly been discriminatory practices, and they need to be cured. And then that provides jobs for the youth, that provides hope for the youth, that provides opportunity for the parents. You know, when you're a young man or a young woman and you see your parents doing certain things and positive things, that reinforces you and gives you hope that you can also do that. So I think what's key with these programs is to have them in place, to regulate them, and to provide opportunities and to provide hope for your city or your state. It definitely does help. The government is generally the largest contributor to an economy with their contracting. And so it's really important that the minority and women-owned businesses get a piece of that.
Well, what's the challenge?
So I think the federal program, and my slide could show, and I think I can share my screen actually. Do you want me to try to share it?
Yes,
Donnie?
please, because this is my forte. I'm a rookie.
Okay.
I thought I had it, but I'm not as proficient as I thought.
Hold on a second. Yeah,
so
I'm not
I know
sure if I
that
can share it.
Share screen button, and there's two.
But I can just talk about what the slides said. So the federal program, the 8A program, which you said you were talking about, I mean, the government contracts out to minority businesses. I think in FY19, it was $132 billion just with the federal government alone. So that, you know, that will infuse any economy. And we all know that the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, African-American net worth was pretty high. It's always ranked pretty high. And the contributing factor to that is the large amount of minority contracting opportunities the federal government has made in Washington, D.C. for minority businesses. And so when you have a strong program like that, as you can see, the net worth of our community grows. And that is a direct attribution to the federal government and the rigor in their program and the strength in their program. It's regulated by the SBA. And again, in FY19, they did very well, $132 billion. I mean, can you imagine, just with MBE and disadvantaged businesses and veteran-owned businesses and women-owned businesses, that's huge. So it's really important that local and state governments have different regulations, and if they inject that type of funding into these programs, you'll see a direct impact into the community.
So I'm having trouble.
It's fine. It's fine. I've already talked about the high points. So the federal government had overall like 21% prime contracting goals, and they have set-asides in the federal government, which is different than most of the local governments where it's mostly focused on subcontracting. But the federal government does focus on prime contracting, so that really helped a lot of our businesses grow. When I was doing federal contracting, I saw a lot of minority-owned businesses that were working with the federal government, different agencies. There's 23 federal government agencies, and out of those 23, the SBA, they'll negotiate with them their annual goals, and they measure them, and they give them a scorecard, and they grade them. So it's very highly regulated, and that's why it's so successful. What you'll find with local governments is that it's less regulated, and it's more influenced by the political will of the current administration, whereas the SBA, it's more consistent and it's based directly on the federal approved budget period. So there's not such influence and ways to tweak or not tweak the system. They are graded on a scorecard. So the stronger the compliance is, usually you see a stronger program.
Okay.
And the federal government does a great job with that.
Now, what is compliance? It's a fancy term, but it's actually our friend. The more compliant our government is, the more Black businesses will benefit. What is compliance?
So compliance is like oversight. It's making sure that in this industry, making sure that each agency is meeting the goals on the contract. Let's say you set a goal of 20% MBE. Compliance is the oversight. It's checked to ensure that they're meeting the goal. They're using the minority business like they say they're going to, and they're complying with all of the contractual obligations and all of the regulations that mandate that program.
Oh,
so it's oversight.
Like police and the police.
Yes, like the consent decree is somewhat of a compliance type program where they're grading and looking and oversight on how the local police department is doing. So something of that sense, yeah.
Good example. No compliance, that means you can have all of the rules in the world, but no compliance, that means it doesn't have any teeth.
Right. So you want to be able to measure it. Again, the federal government is able every year to give you a report on how they're doing, how each agency is doing. They set goals with the agencies and they measure it. And you can go online on the SBA.gov site and you can see everything, how each agency is done, what their goals were, whether they actually exceeded, the federal government exceeded the goals in FY19. That was a big number. I believe they did in FY20 as well. So you can measure it. And if you can't measure a program, you just don't really know how you're doing. So that's what compliance is measuring how you're actually doing year to year. And in a program like this, it should be growing. But in 2017, the Obama administration did do a survey on the local governments. And in general, they found that the programs were not growing. They were pretty stagnant. And again, that's the political will changes every few years. It's less oversight. There's less compliance at times. Some jurisdictions do better than others. But in general, that was the general finding in 2017. And that's the last study that I was ever able to find where they did, it's based on local governments tending to use people they know. I mean, and that's what the report said, that it's just like they have more selection, but they tend to just go with who they know. And that doesn't happen in the federal government.
You mentioned something. You mentioned the study. Can you tell me more? Is this the disparity study?
No, I was talking about the federal government. It was their business development, one of their offices out of the Obama administration. That's the last overall study I could find on all local governments because everyone is so different. But they did do a study to see how local municipalities and states are doing with their programs, like the MBE programs. And again, they found that they generally did not grow because they stayed pretty stagnant. And we've seen that probably, I mean, we can't really measure it here in our city because we don't have numbers to look at, but we would probably be surprised.
Why?
So Baltimore City doesn't have a compliance system. There is a mandate in the city code that they have overall aspirational goals, and then goals are set on a contract by contract basis. But we're not able to get a report on how they're actually performing each year.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
So Baltimore City does not have the technology that can pull a report to say in FY20, I don't know, we had a goal of 27% MBE and 12% of the MBEs received contracts. We don't have a way to measure that because there is not an actual compliance. There's not a compliance reporting system in Baltimore City to date.
Why?
A political will, again, is a huge contributing factor to a lot of local governments. And so you have to.
No, tomorrow. We've had 4 black mayors. 4 black mayors. Nicole, here's the link. Come on in, Nicole. We've had 4 black mayors. Why not? Did somebody sleep at the wheel?
I haven't been around for all 4 black mayors. I can say
aware of black business because they do fundraisers. And when they do the fundraisers, they go down the list of successful black businesses and they call them for donations.
Right. So
you're telling me this has been a one-sided relationship?
Perhaps. I don't think the program is regulated as it could be. But the city has awarded a contract for compliance. They actually just have to use it. So that's.
Let me go back to this, the disparity study. What is the disparity study? And this is something that's a critical component to MBE programs.
Yeah, for local programs, there was a case in some of our other shows, we've talked about the Croson versus Richmond, where they found that in order to have these programs in local government, you have to show every 4 years or so, you have to do a study to show how the minority businesses are doing and if there is a disparity. So you have to almost prove, I mean, we all know there was a disparity, but they make you prove it in order to have these programs. So the disparity study, there's one going on like in Baltimore City right now where they're looking at all the contracts and looking at how they've been awarded and pulling that data together for each industry: construction, goods and services, professional, like architecture, different services that they're going to be looking at, and then they'll rate that and then see how the city is performing. It will be difficult for them because the city doesn't have compliance software, so the study will only be as good as the information that the agencies give to the consultants that are conducting it. It's a lot easier when you have that software because you could just pull reports from it. So again, technology really helps in programs like this in accountability, and accountability is key in these type of programs.
So anything else you want to cover in this first segment? And then we'll transition over to Mr. Bob. We also have Alfred Isaacs on deck. Give me one more tidbit for this morning.
So the federal study that I referred, it was the federal study from a minority business development. It was in 2017, and you can find that online. I say that everyone should go to the SBA site. And again, by each agency, the SBA develops goals agency by agency. The SBA itself has like 75% prime contracting goals, which is huge. And then I believe the Department of Interior. So if you look at the breakdown, and I encourage people to look at the breakdown in Baltimore, and a lot of people are very close to DC, look at the breakdown and see which agencies has the highest participation. Get involved in the 8A program, develop your business around the needs of these programs, and certainly go for it, because it definitely has increased the net worth of a lot of our people in this area, dealing with the federal government, which is a really great program.
Okay, so I want you to hold tight for a second. Okay. We're going to shift gears a tad. So tomorrow,
I'm trying to get this.
Oh, you're doing just
right?
fine.
I mean, it's good. There it is. Finally.
So tomorrow, this is Cynthia Washington. Cynthia, how have you been?
I've been amazing.
Cynthia,
I've been
we are
amazing.
talking about getting contracts. I think you know a
Yes.
little something about that. From what I've known, your expertise is the federal programs.
Yes.
Tell us about that. How can you help Black businesses?
Oh, awesome. Actually, I just pitched this to the city of Orlando. I'm actually handling a the first ever diversity committee here in Orlando and in Maryland state government. We have worked with them to include more African American women because the women are left out of the program in most cases. Well, over the last 24 years, I've helped small minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses win over $750 million in contracts. And what we do is we basically team with the government to supply their goals. We have a very unique program in that we screen and qualify the vendors and then present them for the contracts. So it's all about being qualified. Vendors can come, entrepreneurs can come and want to do government contracting, but they have to be qualified. And there are three areas that we have targeted in their business to get them qualified, and it's management, marketing, and accounting. In those three major pillars of business, they have to be qualified. And so for me, I've always supported African American businesses. Mainly, I think probably 70% of our contracts are given to African American businesses. And we have a way of growing them, but not only growing them, developing them. It's all about technical assistance. And we're the only for-profit company to ever have a co-sponsorship with the U.S. Small Business Administration because we develop plans, growth plans to grow businesses. And they don't know how to do that. I heard you, Tamara, talk about the compliance. There is no compliance program in the federal government even. OMB is the one who's supposed to be managing compliance. We know that. So we go by the scorecards and we go to the agencies and we tell them they're not meeting their goals and we can help them. The way that we help them is basically over the last 24 years, again, we screen and qualify the vendors. You can't turn down a qualified vendor. Okay, so getting qualified is the key. And so we have answered that problem in the federal agencies because when we come to them and we go after their opportunities, we're coming back with qualified vendors. So my advice to every single entrepreneur out there, African American entrepreneur, or even ones that want to become an entrepreneur, is to become a government contractor but get qualified.
And what's that qualification process?
Qualification criteria has been actually designed by one of our federal clients. I actually started with an 8A company 25 years ago, and I was actually their marketing specialist. So I went out to the federal government looking for contracts for them. And 6 months later, I quit my job and started WCI because I realized that the real problem was that the agencies weren't meeting their goals. They weren't connecting with the right vendors. And they don't have to, right now, they're doing more with less. So their resources are not there. If you look at any OSDBU office, any small business office, they have limited resources. They usually have one person in the office, okay? That's not enough to do what we need done, okay? And so what WCI does is we meet with the small business person, but then we go behind them and find out who's really buying and who's buying and what they're buying and how they're buying. And we connect our vendors from around the nation. We're not limited to one particular area, but we have an office there in Maryland. We have an office in Rockville. We have an office in DC. We actually do also entrepreneurial training for Howard University. So this entrepreneurial training is to develop more diverse vendors. We got to keep African American vendors in the pipeline. You got to keep them coming. You cannot stop. You will never have more vendors than you will contract dollars. Trillions of dollars are being spent every single day, and our vendors are winning them because they're qualified.
Okay, so the SBA scorecard is not true compliance. When we look at the scorecards for
No.
each agency, it looks like they're performing well.
No, let me tell you about the scorecard. We
Okay.
understand what's behind the scorecard. That's the agency reporting to them. Okay, are you going to report bad things about your agency? How many agencies do I meet? We go to the source, okay? Because I meet agencies every single day. Agency directors of procurement, directors, the Avdabu offices. They all say, "Yeah, we're meeting our small business goals." Small business is great. You know that 44% of the purchasing is done under small business, but that's not minority. That's not women. Okay. And see, we're fishing in the wrong pool. We're concerned with the certified contracts. No, 44% are purchased in small business. Every single day I'm taking vendors to that small business pool. You got to take them there. There's more fish to catch. You know, you're going in a pool of 23%, sometimes 2% as a woman owned. You're going into 2% as a veteran owned. But when you go in that pool and you can fish and you can get 44% of those contracts, let's go. So you got to be
Right.
qualified. You can't play the federal game if you're not qualified. And so we get companies qualified every single day in the three main areas of contracting, which are technology, construction, and management consulting. That's your R&D, that's your scientific studies, that's your, all of those things. We're being left behind. We get companies GSA schedule certified. We get them websites. We get any area of management, marketing, and accounting. We hire, and it's really cool because we use other small minority, veteran, women-owned businesses to get companies qualified. That's through our affiliation program. You got to be qualified. And so if you need a website, we get a company, African-American, women-owned, hub zone, service-disabled, veteran-owned, to get you qualified. So we're using that pool of vendors to grow their business with other business services, but we're also using those vendors to go after contracts. So the answer is to be qualified.
Okay. Can you give me an example of the qualification process
Sure.
for a business?
Sure.
Okay.
We make it very simple because we work around the nation. We're not limited to any geographic area. Our government officials around the nation need support. Like, let's say this week I was in Alabama at the Air Force Base in Alabama. You have many different agencies. Let's say FAA. Let me use FAA. This is a very good example. You have the headquarters. You have Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City. We bring vendors in. They go to our website, get qualified. There's a credentialing form there. You go into the website. We're going to ask you questions that the government's going to ask you. Actually, that form was devised by a government official, a procurement director, 25 years ago. Of course, we've perfected it over the years, but we had to start with the basis of qualifying them. These are all the questions that they have about your business and whether or not you can do the work. And so we're looking at your management. Who's going to answer your phone? Who's going to take in your clients? Who's going to supply those clients with information? That's important. I answer your phone and you say hello instead of WCI, how may I help you? You're in trouble, So let's start there. Just be professional.
So the qualification is also training in a sense.
Oh, yes, we definitely provide training. We're a training arm for the SBA, for the SDBCs, for the MBDAs, for the Women's Business Center. I sit on the advisory board in the DC Women's Business Center. We train at UF in Florida. We train at Maryland University. We train at Howard University, as I mentioned before. And it's really a great thing because these things are qualifying them, making sure that they have the management in place. So I gave you the example of management, then marketing. You will never see a government official if you don't have a capability statement, okay? They want to see you on paper before they see you in person. So you got to get your marketing in place and then make your website speak to the client. We make certain when we identify a target for our clients, we tell them to go and take that information from that website, that agency website, and put it in your capabilities. They're going to see their information in your capabilities and say, I know they're qualified. They understand what we do. And then accounting. You don't need a CPA up front. Okay, you need a bookkeeper to keep great records for you. If you're not good at accounting, don't do it on your own, because the government will come back and say, show us how you spent our money, the taxpayers' dollars. That's not their money. Don't let any government official tell you that's their money, okay? That's our money. So it should be spent with us, you know? So again, I love this. I love government contracting. I love everything about making it work for African Americans, for the underserved communities. And I've dedicated my life to that. And I want to make certain that companies understand being qualified is just having the proper management, the proper marketing, and the proper accounting in place. And you have to get information. You have to get information for that. Don't be afraid of that. You know, I remember when I started, it was really funny. I'm really good at business. I love business. I love everything about business, but I had great business owners who trained me while I was in college. So I managed a luggage store, this expensive luggage store in Georgetown. And these are all entrepreneurs who gave me an opportunity. I managed properties for this wealthy guy African American guy. He was an awesome business person. So you got to also get that mentoring. You got to get that information that's going to really help you run your business well. Okay. But the other point about government contracting, let me tell you this: they don't have to do business with you. You have to make them do business with you. And that's what I mean by that. You have to be qualified in order for that to happen. They're going to skip right over you if you're not qualified. So again, management, marketing, and accounting, you come to WCI, you come through our system, and you're able to get screened and qualified. And it's on our website. It's easy. It's simple. We keep government contracting simple because it is for us.
Is there a cost to get certified for the qualification with you,
Oh,
with
no,
your
it's free to
organization?
go there. Just go there and get qualified. Now, if you need services, that's going to be different. So
Okay.
yes, if you need services, yes, there's a fee. And let me talk
Okay.
about that a little bit, because African Americans don't like paying for things. I'm going to say that. You know what I mean? I pay for everything I got. When I started, I paid to do a cost accounting. How do I cost out my consulting business? You know, I took a seminar. I paid $75 or something back in 25 years ago. I know it's higher now. But don't be afraid. Have a budget. I have a budget 25 years later. I have a budget for business development. I have to keep growing my business. So let me tell you this. I was going to start off with the FAA story. FAA has a headquarters in DC. I met with the top officials in FAA. They have no minority participation, no African Americans, no women, no veterans. Okay. So I go in there and I said, hey, I know you don't have any minority participation, because I know where to do the research. And so I'm not going to share all of that because that's in my training seminar, but I definitely told them that I know that they don't have any minorities. I know that they don't have any vendors. So we go into the room, and right there, you got to know, when they know you have information that they, think that you are not privy to, you sell them right there. They sent me to Mike Maroney Aeronautical Center in Oklahoma City, where they have a 2% minority population. I flew 8 days in there to meet with them. They're like, how did you even start this kind of business? It's amazing. You got to get in. And in order to get in, you got to be qualified. You got to do your homework. You got to pay. African Americans, you got to pay to get in the door. You got to pay someone who knows more than you. And you got to get new information. I always say in my Madam President books I'm writing now to help entrepreneurs, I always say you got to get new information so you can do something new. We as African Americans need to do something new. Okay. Not only don't talk about the government and what they're not giving us. No, we need to do something new. We need to get new information so we can do something new. And we were not privy to this kind of information. We talk about racial inequity. We have companies who do this, the surveying for us, find the racial. I got one agency in Florida, they're spending $57 million. Only $262,000 is going to minorities. And the
Wow.
disparity there is black and white. Okay,
Right.
so
Right.
we got to have new information so we can say, I'm qualified. I'm going to get qualified no matter what. There are so many contracts that you would never have enough diverse vendors for those contracts. And the government buys everything. Just know
Right.
that. If
And
you
what I
think
tend
they
to
don't buy
see,
what I sell, yeah.
right.
If you think they don't buy what I sell, you're wrong. We could find it. We'll find who buys it.
Right, but what I tend to see with certifying minority businesses is that we tend to stovepipe ourselves into just certain areas, and we're heavy, and maybe we have
Yeah.
100, qualified people in the same trade. And so when you mentioned the FAA not
Yes.
utilizing not having any minority participation, because you have to look for those niche areas, and if you're that rare,
That's
you're in
right.
that niche area, you're naturally going to get more business. So unfortunately, we
That's
do
right.
tend, like you're saying, to try something we don't usually try. I always encourage businesses to look into other areas that we're not heavy in, and to form that
Yes.
niche. So you are that minority business that provides that service or provides that
That's
good that
right.
it's very rare. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, you're right about that. And again, sometimes it's just that you don't know. And again, that's why we have to reach out. We have to be prepared to say, I don't know what I'm doing here. Let me reach out. And free information is exactly what you're going to get. Free information. You're going to get something that, doesn't really profit you any, because you don't know what to do with it. They're not going to implement it for you. They're not going to tell you how to use it. They're just going to give it to you. And that's what the SBA does. That's what the federal government does. You can go online and get plenty of information. You can have videos. How do I implement that? How do I tailor it to fit my company, my capabilities, my work? Where do I look for that information? They don't. It's not something. Again, I've had Jewish business owners who have mentored me. I've had Asian business owners I work with a pool of Asian business owners right now. You have to know that we are not getting the information we need, but we're also not paying for that information and moving forward in it. And we know it. We see it every day because we work with so many different nationalities. But we have to change. We have to do something different. And in this age of information, it's really important that we keep up, one, but also that we change our game. We change what we're doing to make sure that we're included. I don't ever accept. We have created, my husband and I, 4 different entrepreneurs in our home. Our kids are entrepreneurs.
Wow.
We have a 27-year-old who is a dancer choreographer. He moved to LA. He's doing Justin Bieber videos. Just amazing. He's doing commercials. He is an entrepreneur, and we started him off at 16. So you got to give this to
Wow.
your kids. They will never forget it. My son now, he's creating product for different, sports companies. He's going to the next level in his entrepreneurship. We have a daughter who's in culinary school right now. She's managing in baking and pastry and culinary management. She already created her own restaurant. She's vegan, she eats healthy. She's
So
about
am I.
sustainability. Yeah, awesome. Well, my husband's in the he used to work with me when I was working with Donnie or seeing Donnie a lot. And so he said my husband, we actually moved to Florida recently so that he could pursue the call of God on his life, but he got into the solar business. So what timely,
Okay.
this is so timely. Department of Energy is
Right.
buying so much solar right now and supporting it.
Absolutely.
So we just love it. It's just amazing.
Well, thank you. Donnie's
Cynthia,
back.
Yeah.
Cynthia, thank you
Yes,
so
but
much
thank
for
you for
joining
having
us.
me, Donnie.
The pleasure's all mine. Keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you so much. We're going to hear from our
Yes.
city council president. In case you don't know him, this is Baltimore City President Nick Mosby. Good morning, Mr. Mosby. Mr.
Good morning,
President.
Donnie. Good morning, Tamara. Good morning, Cynthia. Thanks for having me today.
Good deal. Big brother,
Good
we know
morning.
that minority business. Well, first of all, Cynthia has a wonderful company, just in case. Go ahead, do your spiel, Cynthia. This is the
Yeah,
city
let me
council.
hear about it. What's your company,
Yeah.
Cynthia?
Definitely. My company is WCI, Washington Concepts Incorporated. We're right there in Rockville, Maryland, and Howard University. We have a DC office at Howard University. And we support small minority, veteran, and women-owned businesses with obtaining federal, state, and local contracts and prime contractor contracts. And we support the government agencies in meeting their goals. We have many different agencies, federal, state, and local agencies who are looking for minorities to meet their goals. And we screen and qualify those vendors and then present them to our government officials. That's what we do
Wow.
for 25 years.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so important. What we've seen over the past. I've been city council president for a little over 3 months. As city council president, my responsibility is presiding over the Board of Estimates, which is Baltimore City Spending Board. So all of the bids, the contracts, the extensions, the
Awesome.
change orders, they all are approved.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But they're all approved through the board. And what we see is this constant flow, particularly when we talk about waivers of the same types of industries, the same type of jobs that are being waived. Many times there hasn't been any substantive way of trying to identify minority women-owned businesses that could kind of fit that scope of work for 5, 6, 7 years. So, we look to continue to kind of dig down into the procurement process here in the city of Baltimore. I'm excited about some legislation that we'll be coming out with in the coming weeks. But we've really turned like a 15-20 minute kind of meeting into like literally a two and a half hour meeting where we're really digging into the contracts and we're really trying to identify opportunities for growth in our businesses. The reason that this is so near and dear to me, I know a city like Baltimore, that the more local companies are, the more cultural competency that they have to our communities, the more likely they'll also hire from our communities. And it's really about trying to identify how do you grow Black businesses in the city of Baltimore. When we talk about Baltimore City, 30 years ago, we had 14, 15 of the top 100 African-American owned companies were based in the city of Baltimore. We look at it today on that list from a services perspective, you only have one. And with the size of our city, with the makeup and characteristic of our city, as well as the folks that are making the decisions for a $3.6 billion budget, it's really concerning. And it's been a core competency since I've taken over as city council president. It will continue to be. I'm excited to work with folks like you, Cynthia. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm not sure if Baltimore City has ever done work with you in the past, but definitely interested in hearing some of the best practices and things that you can kind of help us out with.
Mr. President, we also have a gentleman, I think you may know him. He is a noted attorney, Mr. Robert Fulton DeShield. Good morning, Mr. DeShield.
Good morning, Donnie, Mr. President, Tamara, and Cynthia. How's everybody this Saturday morning?
Good. Mr. DeShield, you have, we were waiting for you to set the tone for today.
I'm sorry?
We're waiting. We need you to set the tone for today.
Well, this is Saturday morning musings, okay? So you get what you get. The biggest impediment to development of Black business is government itself. And let me tell you what I mean by that. The sacred cow in public procurement, the shibboleth, is awarding contracts based upon the low bid. That principle rewards those who have accumulated the knowledge and resources and experience to which Black companies have been denied. Understand what I'm saying?
No. Could you say that again? I'm slow.
Let me say it again. Public procurement, there's one principle in public procurement that is sacrosanct. The sacred cow is award to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. Okay, Baltimore City, Maryland, the world. That principle rewards those who have accumulated the knowledge, the resources, and experience that Black companies have been denied for 300 years. Okay. No government yet that I've seen has addressed that principle. That's the problem. And it hasn't, and you're right, Don, it hasn't changed with the color of the mayors, because quite frankly, we're trained to think certain ways. We, as Black people, have been trained to think that we lack the resources and knowledge and experience to do anything without the aid and assistance of white folks. That's this is Saturday morning musings now. Okay, so forgive me. There's one decision that changes, that makes the whole difference, and that is who decides who decides. Okay, who decides who decides? Until we get in the position where we discard the training that has been given us as Black people and recognize our value as such, we can't, even the color of our skin doesn't make a difference. People talked about what the study that Obama did. Obama took 2 years to meet with the Black caucus, and only did that after Trayvon Martin was killed. Why? Because I don't believe he frankly understands and grew up in a situation where he understood what it means to be Black. So I digress. Everything that your speakers have said is true. But let me tell you something. The SBA Small Business 8A program has been co-opted by big business. Most of the successful 8A companies that go in as minority or otherwise are in fact, through a mentor-protege arrangement, are in fact controlled by big business. It's no different at the federal level. It's no different in the DBE program. We have to get to the position where we are making the decisions, and we have to decide who we are, not other people.
So let me ask you this. How can we best support City Council President Nick Mosby when I watched Wednesday's hearing, and I've been instructed to watch this Board of Estimates meeting? Honestly, Mr. President, it's painful to watch the Board of Estimates meeting. It's painful. It's painful, man.
Well, let me answer that. Let me answer that question. How do we support him? By electing more people like him. That's how we support him. But by electing more people like him, we don't have time to try to unlearn all of the wrong things that have been embedded in the minds and hearts of our own people. When we find a young star, when we find somebody who's on the right path, we have to support him. But the best way to support him is by surrounding him by people in positions of authority that think like he thinks. That's the only effective way.
How can we support you, Mr. President?
I mean, the one thing I've asked folks is just to, and I know Lawyer DeShiel is a constant, participant, and he's always watching. But I mean, City Hall is the people's building. Every morning, every Wednesday at 9 o'clock when we hold that Board of Estimates meeting, that is not my meeting. That's our meeting as a city. And I think what I've attempted to do is try to make it as accessible and transparent as possible, but really communicating, educating, and creating a level of awareness to our folks to really participate, to really understand and know what's going on there. I mean, to date, we've held up contracts about painting. We've held up contracts about laying carpet. We've held up contracts about moving salt. When the Department of Public Works comes to me and says, "Hey, Council President, this is a hydraulic pump that's been there for 100 years, and there's one company in this area that can do it." I get that. But when we're talking about paint, carpet, and salt, I don't. And when we see these waivers, when we see these decisions that have happened over the past 5 and 6 and 7 years, it's really important for us to speak up. So another part that we constantly talk about is developing a cure process. Just because a contract has been put out there doesn't mean it should stay that way till it ends. There should be ways for us to go back and correct, or market has changed, or other companies have come up that can kind of participate in that. There should be ways for us to kind of go back and reevaluate some of the decisions of the past. So, the folks the way that I ask folks to support is just paying attention, because the more we're paying attention, the more we're involved, the more we're educated on the process, the easier it is when we're pushing back on some of these things that we've been doing to date. So I just try to grow the awareness of the importance of the Board of Estimates and allow folks to, like I said, participate in it.
You know,
Anything you want to add, Mr. President? I know your day is busy, but anything you want to say to potential businesses out there who are looking to get involved, and not just here in Baltimore. And let me also say, Baltimore, despite all is wrong, we're still a national leader, Mr. President. Believe it or not, Baltimore is still a national leader.
Donnie, that's scary. I mean, when you look at the racial wealth gap in this country and where it's gone over the past 30 years, when we look at the African-American business and from a revenues perspective in comparison to, you know, other businesses, particularly in cities like Baltimore, the fact that when you look at African-American wealth in the Baltimore metropolitan region that ranks about fourth in the country, the numbers are just scary. I mean, we have definitely moved in the wrong direction. And I think that what happens is if you're not intentional, if you are not comfortable talking about what we're talking about, what we talk about every Wednesday at 9 o'clock at the Board of Estimates meeting, things won't change. And the structures that have been in place for 300-400 years will continue to build upon themselves. So that's why it's so critically important that we have discussions like this, that we have moderators like you, that we have folks like Lawyer DeShiel and Cynthia Washington and Tamara that's unafraid to really speak up on these particular issues, because we are moving in the wrong direction. I mean, we can point out individual successes, right? You know, if we look at like the Black Enterprise Top 100, but as it relates to us collectively, we're moving in the wrong direction. The last thing I'm gonna say as a legislator, a person who's passed some pretty big bills, not only on a local level, but also on the statewide level. We can continue to chase after policy. We can continue to push for social justice reform. And I'm at the forefront of it. I'm going to continue to be there and push for those policies. But until we're able to control economics in our community in a way that folks from our community, that folks are connected to our community, that folks have cultural competencies to our community, the same systemic issues that have been plaguing us for 30, 40, 50, 60 years will stay intact. It's critically important that we go down this path of controlling our economics, that we understand the importance of closing this racial wealth gap in America, and then we provide real opportunities. The last thing I'll say is, I know I said the last thing before, is this idea of getting a company from a sub to a prime. That also has to become a priority. We also have to make a priority that when we're talking about participation for these deals, it's not just about laying carpet or putting up sheetrock, but it's also the professional services of it. So the lawyers, the accountants, the interior designs, the architects, the landscape artists. You know, we need folks of color to also be able to set up businesses and participate in that. Because what I also see, particularly with these projects, is an inverse bell curve, where it's either like the setup work or it's the clean out, close out work. And that's what you kind of save for minority participation. No, we need that line to be as flat as possible. We need folks to participate across the board. And that's, again, that ecosystem that I'm talking about feeding. I mean, the challenge is great, but that means we do nothing? No, that means that we continue to try to develop these incremental solutions. And, you know, I'm excited about some of the legislation that we're working on. Like I said, is going to come out in the next couple of weeks that really looks at and ensuring that minority, Black, women-owned businesses in the city of Baltimore get a fair shake at what we're doing as a city. So, Donnie, again, thanks a million for giving me this opportunity to come out to speak. Whenever you do these in the future, I'm here. This is a core competency of myself as well as my office. And, you know, I just appreciate the opportunity to speaking to you guys today.
And thank you to your office. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye, everyone.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. DeShiel, the one thing that we wanted to ask you about specifically was Blacks as primes. We also been joined by Alfred Isaacs. We'll hear from in a little bit. But Blacks as prime contractors, according to what you've told me, with Tamara, and what I've seen with my own eyes, getting Blacks in prime contract position seems not to happen enough.
Well, I just told you why. I told you why, because nobody's dealt with the fundamental thing that keeps Black business out, and that is the process by which contracts are awarded. That is the low bid. That is what stands in the way. And contrary to what Nick said, subcontractors are not baby primes waiting to grow up. Subcontractors are trade contractors in specialty areas, and that's what they will always be, unless and until the government awards a contract in that trade. The primary impediment to Johnny, how do you have a level playing field when one bidder has 300 years of experience and the other one started 2 years ago? How do you level that playing field? You can't, if you maintain the same entry point. As long as you make low bid the entry point, you cannot level the playing field, because there's no program that can give me 300 years of experience in 2 years or 5 years. There's no technical assistance. There's no technical assistance that can accommodate for those years of loss and denial and deprivation.
Cynthia, you agree with that? Cynthia?
Oh, totally. And we've overcome that. And let me just tell you, yes. Let me see.
You're good.
You have to let me in.
No, we hear you fine.
I'm good? Okay, great. It says I'm in the back page.
No, you're live.
Yes, we've actually overcome that. You're so right.
Mr. DeShield.
Great.
Yeah, it keeps freezing up on us. I'm sorry, Mr. DeShield. So, Alfred, come on in here. So, Mr. DeShield, I don't know if you know Alfred Isaacs, but before I met you, he was probably the best mentor I had in the realm of MBE, not just in the city of Baltimore, but throughout the state of Maryland, also Florida. Also, what's the other state, Alfred? New York?
Yeah, I did some work in New York.
Okay. So you've been listening, Alfred. You've been posing questions. Help me out. What's the word?
Legislation is good, but the question is the how. You know, because I've seen very good legislation, but there is no plan to execute. There is no incentive. There is no enforcement. Enforcement is the most important thing. Compliance checks. But if you don't have a strong enforcement, then, you know, a slap on the wrist don't mean nothing. People understand when you start to take back money. So when you have an enforcement program, you have to put a value on it, which is so great that the contractor will not violate because of the expense. Suspension. When last has a company been suspended for more than 6 months? Suspend them for a year.
Last year, actually, Mr. Isaacs.
For more than 6 months?
2 years. I did it myself.
Oh, okay, good. Well, okay.
They were suspended for 2 years for non-compliance, for absolutely. And
first time in 25 years it'd been done.
Well, actually, Mr. DeShields, we're talking about a different one. You're talking about the one where we penalized them financially, but there was a HVAC company in the spring of last year that I did penalize for, and they cannot bid for city contracts for 2 years. And that was the last that I was allowed to do at the time. So it has been done.
What I'm saying, when you did it, prior to that, it had been done for 25 years.
And it hasn't been done since.
And it hasn't been done since.
And so when we talk about legislation, like Mr. Isaacs was saying, it's good to have legislation, but are you going to enforce it? And actually the city, and it's interesting to hear the council president say there's new legislation coming when the city has never enforced the legislation that's in place right now. So if they would just enforce what's in place right now, maybe there would be some changes. And I absolutely agree with Mr. DeShields with a low bid of, if you're a company that's been in existence for 300 years, you have the resources, you have the systems and the technology to find out how to get that lowest bid, and then the contract is awarded to you, and then you know how to play around, and the players, and you increase your actual spend by all these amendments and different changes to your contract, so you know how to play the game, and then you're not penalized for that either. But and so to me, that justifies a disparity in contracting directly with the government. And I just cannot understand why we don't have somewhat of a set-aside program. I mean, it's very clear the disparity is there, and there is discrimination within contracting directly as a prime with the city, just for those reasons alone that Mr. DeShields has said.
So Tamara, you and I are going to step off for a second. Mr. DeShields, I want you to keep talking with Alfred.
I'm very happy to talk. Good morning, Alfred. How are you doing? Glad to meet you.
I'm doing well, and you? My experience has been such. There's a lot of good regulations. There's absolutely no, and there's good compliance, but there's no enforcement. And the only program that I've seen work is the one that they used to have in Miami-Dade when they had after the riots and they started the Black Business Program. Those were called set aside before set aside became negative.
Right.
Now, a lot of people don't know that the DBE program has set aside. If you can prove that there is disparity within the program, and the only way to address it is to set aside, then you can request a set aside from the federal government. What they have done is run the SBE program, the Small Business Program, as a race neutral. But even in the race conscious DBE program, there is part of the requirement if you can justify a set aside. It is not, you can't, not that you can't do it, is that who is going to put the paperwork to admit that their program needs a set aside. You have to accept that there's a problem to fix it. So if there is no acceptance of a problem, then there is no fix it. What my experience in Miami-Dade at the time was, they broke the trades out because that is where the participation was. So the prime could bid, but could not bid certain trades. And if the prime was to self-perform a trade, the prime would have to do a good faith effort to justify why he has to self-perform all of it. Now, good faith effort, the way I consider it, is what's in your control. So everything is in your control because you're the prime. And while I am requesting that, I am doing my background research. So when you come to me with numbers, I'm going to tell you, no, these are the people who can do it. The problem is, how do we fund it? This is how we fund it. When there is enforcement and there is a financial cause, whatever the value is, that does not go to the state. That does not go to the organization. That goes into a fund to support the program. So the people who do not follow the requirements pay to have the program. Miami-Dade was able to create bonding, training, financial because of the amount of funds they were able to collect. And the first time they did it, the county put it in their budget. They had to get the mayor to take it back out and put it in a trust for the program. Now, when you violate a prime for non-compliance, that money that he said was supposed to be with the minorities, supposed to stay with the minorities. As far as I'm concerned, it is a budget developed for minorities. You don't meet the goal, the money goes back to a minority program for development, for funding, for bonding, for insurance, for what the banks do not do for minorities. If you create a program that has a development component driven by enforcement.
Somebody's got some feedback going on. But anyway, we have to the stage Dana Moore, Chief of Equity. Good morning, Dana Moore. How are you?
I am well. I'm well. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to hi, Mr. Isaacs. Thank you for inviting me to join. I'm a frequent listener, first-time participant.
We're glad to have you, Craig.
If I may, sometimes we get so far away from where we began that we forget our point of origin. the fundamental problem, in my opinion, with most of these 8A programs, and I developed a lot of them, not just in Baltimore. I was a consultant one time. I went around the country writing these programs in various cities. The fundamental problem is the government says that we have discriminated against you, right? Because we've denied you access for many, many years. But the government's answer is not that we will do business with you. We're going to tell that guy to do business with you. We're not going to get rid of any of the impediments to any of the things that kept you out. We're going to tell that guy, which presumes, of course, that the prime contractor is always going to be somebody from the community other than ours. You see, we have to begin with the end in mind, again, no government that I've seen, and Mr. Isaac is right. The only program that's really come close to working effectively are set-asides, but they're real set-asides. They're not what government calls set-asides now, which is the MBE subcontracting program. I will tell you, it was never intended to be a subcontracting program. It was intended to be a participation program. The government made it subcontracting because that was politically acceptable. Because to avoid dealing with the fundamental problem, which is the system of awarding contracts, period, which is the low bid system, which, as I say, rewards the companies that have accumulated the years of knowledge and experience that the minority companies have been denied. So if government really wants to change it, government, you do business with minority contractors directly. Don't tell the white companies to do it. Don't kick the can down the road. Deal with it. And because but there are political consequences to that approach. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dana.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Attorney DeShiel. The issue is how to do that, and I think that I feel like now is the time. Now is the moment in Baltimore, at least, where we can actually make the changes that you're talking about. And I come to my new job with an interesting perspective. My uncle started out as a small 8A accounting firm in Washington, D.C. The name of his company was Irving Burton Associates. And he started out just vying for this contract and that contract and getting in wherever he could. And eventually he became the prime on so many government contracts that he graduated. And I remember when he graduated from the 8A program and he was standalone, he became the prime on most of the contracts. And growing up, we used to laugh that Uncle Irving had so much money that he built his own bank. And he did indeed build his own bank in Northern Virginia. And that bank has been sold and resold and resold, and it still exists. And, that's the model. That's the model. And that's what we should be striving for in Baltimore City and across the country. Mayor Scott has directed that the city revamp, review, and revise its procurement processes. I know that, we've looked at it before. We're going to look at it again. Mr. DeShiel, I really appreciate what you shared with me about some of the history of that. But I listened to, City Council President Mosby. He's right. I mean, we're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Now we got to do something. We've got to act. The cities receive significant dollars from the federal government as a consequence of both the CARES Act and the American, I think it's called the American Rescue Plan, the ARP fund.
Right.
So you know what? If we're ever going to do it, we're going to do it now, because we have the will, we have the people, and I believe we're going to have the funds to really revise and put some heft behind our promises to be more equitable in how we conduct city business.
How creative will you become?
I'm sorry?
How creative?
Well,
everything on the table?
Yeah. Everything is on the table right now. When I was asked to take on the role as the city's first ever Chief Equity Officer, I was given the charge that part of my job is to make people uncomfortable. And, I've known Bob and Mr. Glover a long time, and I think that they would say that that's not really what Dana likes to do, but it is definitely something Dana can do. And I accept the smile, Bob, as affirmation of that.
Yes.
So I'm empowered, but I just did a list. We have about 40 some odd 50 chief equity or equity coordinators across every city agency, board, and commission, and we're fired up. The mayor and his team are hyper focused. So is the city council. I mean, this is something we all agree on. If we all agree, are we not charged? Are we not mandated to move forward creatively but aggressively?
In incentives, if you make each director of every department responsible for his number, and that is part of his evaluation, then it's a management top down. But if you leave it with the procurement officer, and you have to, if you leave it at the procurement officer department, there is no incentive for management to push anything because they are removed from it. So
I agree with. Yeah, I agree with you. The equity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion requirements are top down. You know, we're going to be doing the implicit bias training for the agency directors, deputy directors, but also the mid-level managers and the procurement officers. You know, that's where we begin. Eventually, it'll be across the whole city. But this is a whole city requirement. We haven't done it, but I found an executive order from Denver, Colorado. You all might be familiar with it, where those that are doing or wanting to do business with the city of Denver must share information about their own diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And they're supposed to fill out a form. It's a fillable form. And they do that. They submit that with every application. And I believe points are given for, you know, how they respond. I don't know if points are taken away. That would be good too. But I'd love to see Baltimore do that, because that's how that's yet another way of how we act on our values.
Dana, hold up, Alfred. Dana, how do we hold the agencies accountable? How do we measure if Department A has met a goal on MBE over the past year?
So the city's when he was city council president, now Mayor Scott enacted legislation that sets out requirements, a number of requirements in the equity space, one of which we're to do an equity survey, analysis and survey annually. It's going to be delayed this year. We did it last year. The results, there's a equity report that's accessible. The actual equity dashboard, we're not going to be publishing this from last year. We'll be doing it for this year. And you'll see how every agency, board, and commission is doing with respect to equity initiatives. There's a series of about 15 or 20 questions that they're asked. It'll be reviewed by the city administrator and the mayor's chief of staff and me. And we will have conversations with those that are doing really, really well. And we will have conversations with those that are not. And I've said it before, and it sounds a little heavy-handed, but there's some that think that we don't need to do this, that we're A-okay. And
Dana, I watched the Board of Estimates meeting on Wednesday, and I felt like I was going to Lamel without my backup and got, you don't know about Lamel Junior High School, you had to fight there. You had to fight every day. I felt like I got punched in my face. There was one contract, they tabled it because it didn't have any MBE participation, and they were getting a waiver. And then the guy who was speaking on behalf of the agency, this white guy, honestly, Dana, and I'm only from North Avenue, but he didn't look like he cared one iota as to whether or not an MBE got a piece or not. That's just my perch.
Perception is reality. And I apologize. I missed this week's Board of Estimates because I was actually in the hospital.
Yes, I hope. We're glad you're back.
Right. Oh, yeah. I was gonna tap in from the emergency room, but once they gave me morphine, that ended that. So I didn't see it, but I will go back and watch it. And I'm sorry that happened. That should not have happened.
This was a recurring contract. So this is something that comes up like every 2 years, and it was tabled, and it's like, oh, well, we've never had an MBE for it before, so we'll just put it out there. We'll go through. You know, let me just say this.
Unacceptable.
Cynthia, I know, Cynthia, I've had you on mute for a minute. Anything you want to pose to Dana Moore, our Chief of Equity in Baltimore? Cynthia?
Oh, totally. I'm just excited to hear her. Yes. It's not coming through. Is it
Yeah,
coming
you're
through?
good. You're good. You're good.
I'm not on. My mic is on. Okay, great. Yeah, I'm very pleased to meet you, Dana. I am very excited to hear some of the measures that they are going to put in place to measure whether or not diversity is being, met, inequity is being met. However, in state and local governments, as we mentioned in the beginning, there is no system in place for tracking those numbers. And so if they're contracting and there's no numbers to identify, what diversity vendors are being contracting with the entities, then there is no way to measure what's being done with those contracts. So I wanted to ask, what system are you going to put in place to be able to identify those contractors, be able to, identify who's growing, who's not, what measures you have in place? Because in the state and local government, our experience has been, because there is no transparency of information, then there is no way of measuring, and no way of definitely not holding anybody accountable for not doing it. And that's been and we've worked in many state and local government, county agencies, and there is no way to measure that. So I'm curious to know how you're going to do that. And the other key to that is your public-private part. And the other question I have is your public-private partnerships that you would form to do that.
So excellent observation, Ms. Washington. And I think we're actually friends on Facebook. I might have that wrong. But one of the first hires that I need to make for the office,
so.
I think we are. I will be hiring a data analyst to help with exactly that. There's a lot of data, a lot of measures that have to happen just within city government, but in terms of businesses and working with the city, I think work has already done to do some data capturing for the Minority Women's Business Opportunity Office. And for those that are listening, that's LaShella Miller. So that's happening. The Mayor's Office of Performance and Innovation will be able to help us with capturing and creating data sets that are, one, interesting, two, usable. We are actually creating data sets that can be manipulated. So people can actually use the data. Bob, I have said I'm a little nervous about it because when you do that, the lawyers love it because it helps the lawyers make their case. But right, I know. Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Slow down, Dana.
Yes.
He's smiling like he just swallowed the canary. What'd you just say?
Yeah. Well, so the city has created a new position, the Chief Data Officer, for the whole city. He has established a data governance committee of which I'm a member. We're setting up the structure right now as we speak. He might
So
even, I
that,
don't know.
so that includes a software for monitoring MBE.
But
Yeah, yes.
But Donna, if I may, I don't want to cut Dana off, but Dana said something very important earlier on, and I want to chime in. I want to chime in on it. She said something about executive order that she was reviewing from Denver. I think the city already has the mechanism to. I guess it was maybe the pay-to-pay laws that currently exist that define what a government contractor is. It's a small step from where it is to require along with the other data that contractors required to submit, data evidence and the extent to which it utilizes minority firms on its private work. That's a small ask. In fact, it was recommended to do that 20 years ago.
Oh.
All right.
Thank you, Dana Moore, for bringing it up.
There really isn't anything new under the sun. It's just new people thinking about it.
It's new people thinking about it. I know Alfred wants to jump in. And my job has been, first of all, what are the false barriers that make it so hard to do business with the city, to get hired by the city, and to get promoted within the city? That's my first job. I'm looking at our legislation. What is it that we say and we write and say people are supposed to do? But we also have to dig into the practices. I think what Donnie said, he was watching the BOE, he was angry, contract that's come up year after year. What are the practices that allow that to happen? And we have to change it. And, Bob, you're exactly right. What the next level is, what are the changes that we can make right now that are free, that do not require legislation, that do not require us asking anybody, do we have your permission to do this? The city can act, right now. So it's a lot happening. There's it's a lot to get my arms around, but there's a lot of people that are helping. But for Cynthia's question, I feel like we're going to be flooding the public with data. We've tried to talk yesterday about like who's really interested in the data. At the neighborhood. Yeah, Donnie, I know Cynthia is. Everyone's got their hand up. So it's going to take about 3 to 6 months to really get it, usable. I've asked a conversation happened yesterday. What are a few things that we can do right away that are really interesting, that are really appealing, that are the quick changes? But listen, Mayor Scott is hyper focused on this, and fortunately for us, so is the city council president. Sun, moon, stars have aligned.
How do we keep this momentum going? What can we do as citizens? And Alfred, you have a question. Go ahead, Alfred.
First of all, do you accept unsolicited proposals?
Well, I do.
The other question is what is the object? What is the goal? What are you looking to achieve? Can we quantify it and qualify it? If we can do both, then we can set a plan to reach it. If it's just a statement of hope, then it's a statement of hope. But if it's quantified and qualified, these are the milestones, this is what we're going to achieve, then everything is on the table. And the city might have to go with a local preference to ensure that the local business that are certified within the city get an opportunity primarily. Because every other state around Maryland does it except Maryland. I don't understand why Maryland does it. There are cities in Virginia that have a city preference. So if the city of Baltimore decides that we're looking after our tax base, therefore we have to ensure that they get first bite of the apple, then people will get excited because people know that this is coming down the pike. What do I do? I live in Bowie. I might have to move to Baltimore City.
First of all, we would love for you to move to Baltimore, and it's very chilling.
The truth of the matter is, every city government that has run a city program for their businesses has done well. Because what you can do with that program is move that program to ensure that these firms are now qualified to build state, school boards. Maryland has passed a law for P3 agreements. It's not in the manual. It's not in the federal government. There is no process for that. Baltimore can create their own.
Alfred.
There are other things that can be added to what? If you go with that as a start.
Mr. Bob, you were saying something?
No, I wanted to say to Alfred, we got to change our paradigm. Alfred, I don't care where your company is located. I care where the employees live that you employ and how much you pay them in salaries and benefits. We live in a world economy where the company is located has become almost irrelevant. Business is all over the internet now. It doesn't the old way of identifying what is important to a community. We got to abandon that. It really doesn't matter where the company is headquartered. The only real benefit to a community of a business is who it employs and how much it pays the people.
Right.
So you can be in California, but if you're hiring people from Sandtown, Winchester, and you're paying the people in Sandtown, Winchester a fair and adequate wage to be able to support their families. And remember now, if the family is the principal institution of humanity, if you don't support and nurture the family, nothing else matters. So if you employ the right people, if you pay them enough to support their families, you could be in Afghanistan, where your headquarters is. I don't care. Okay.
No, I understand that, but you also understand that the city every government agency looks at the tax base. The business pay tax. The employees buy and pay taxes. If the business and the employees is in the same area, then that tax base increases. And if the city state contract,
corporations are people. We got to stop thinking about corporations as though they really have minds of their own. The corporations are just people. That's all they are, holding certain offices. But you're also right that we have to start with the end in mind. If I give you a canvas, a clear canvas, and some paintbrushes and some paint, and I tell you to paint the world as you would have it. Okay, show me what it would be if you had it your way. But we don't do that. We just want to make things better. We don't want to make them right.
Well, that's the question. What is the? I'll.
So Alfred, calm down. We Dana Moore, any final thoughts? And we got to bring you back, Dana. We'd like to do this for the next 3 weeks. We love any technical support, advice, agency heads, whatever you want. We want to cover not just Baltimore, but also the state. We want to cover federal, and we want to cover private. We just want to help empower our businesses. This is a majority Black city, and I think all of you are right. With a new mayor, city council president, and comptroller, there's no excuse whatsoever. And that's all we're trying to do is bring information. We don't have to be in love with each other. We don't even have to like each other. But if we are about our word of serving our people, we will do everything we can to bring the information forward. Dana Moore.
Absolutely. And yes, I will come back. I will provide you, Mr. Glover, with some written information that you can share, freely. I know that you talked a lot about companies getting certified. From what I've experienced, we need to make sure that our companies are capitalized and that they can actually compete. We have talked about a lot of ideas, one of which is finding ways to get capital to companies to set up funds that do that.
Breaking down contracts, unbundling.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's happening now. I think I know that it happened under Mayor Pugh, and that's going to continue. How to break down contracts into smaller bites, but we have to also build capacity. It should not be that we have a large contract and there's no minority, women-owned local company can do that work. We have to create those. We have to support those businesses. We have talked about the bonding requirements and find ways to either reduce the bonding requirements or find nonprofits that will provide the bonding. We're just really thinking differently about how the city does business. There's a lot more to share. I don't know if you had a full, robust discussion about the MBE program as it now exists versus the mayor's, I think it's, what is it called? The Minority and Women-Owned Business Development, which is the mayor's office. How can those two work together more collaboratively? So there's a lot to share. I'd love to share about the new city solicitor's commitment to pursue efforts to not work with companies that we have found have discriminated against minority businesses. He's ready to do that. So I'd love to come back and talk about that. I don't know if I can get him to come on the show, but yeah, there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening.
Any contact information for you for anyone that would like to get in touch with you?
Sure. My email is kind of long, but it is equity.dana, P. Moore, M-O-O-R-E, at baltimorecity.gov. My cell phone is 443-610-6761. Anybody that has questions about how to get certified or how to prepare an application or a proposal to compete for a contract, call Lashella Miller, and that's Lashella Miller. And her phone number is 410-396-4355. And there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot we can talk about. Happy to do it.
Good deal. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us on this
Sure.
Saturday morning. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you. I don't know how to exit. I'm not seeing.
No sweat.
Peace out.
So Mr. Bob, how do we do today? And we're not done just yet, but and let me tell you, Mr. Bob, I'm so proud of you because you know how to bridle your passion to help us stay on point. The same with you, Alfred. Your brain goes a million miles a minute, but yet you were able to stay still for just 30 seconds. So we appreciate that. I know it's difficult. Cynthia, how about you? What do you think, Cynthia? What do you think of Contractors College?
Yeah, I love it. Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit. I know I've had some technical challenges here. I don't know what was going on.
You're good now.
But
you're good now.
I'm here now, yes. And but my point is there has to be some kind of interjection from industry. And that's something that I believe Dana is going to incorporate in her efforts. But there hasn't always been that industry, that knowledge, that expertise in contracting from the outside. The government cannot reach the people who need to participate on their own because they don't trust them. They don't trust that they're going to do right by them. And so they have to have that public-private partnership to create that unity in going after our people, and definitely our people, because they're, again, like just there hasn't been that level of trust with the government in our communities. There hasn't been that level of relationship to be able to say, yes, come on in now. Our doors are open. We're going to work with you. That's not going to happen. The people are not going to come. I work with mayors all the time who put programs in place and the people don't come. They don't come because they don't trust them. And that's been the situation with our people. And I know that.
We don't blame them.
Well, I mean that is true, and it's certainly true in Baltimore County. But that also stems from another fact that we don't talk about. But the oldest and largest of every so-called minority organization that is in any way interested in business development or even so-called civil rights, the boards of directors of everyone is predominantly non-minority. Whether you're talking about the Urban League, the National Minority Development Supply Council, every single one, the board of directors. In other words, we're not defining for ourselves who we are, and we're not defining for ourselves what our objectives are. They're being controlled by others.
I agree. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was, we have to do something new as people. And I don't care where we go, what we're doing, or how we're doing it with contracting. We have to do something new. We have to operate in unity. We have to come together. We have to be able to, as a people, remind ourselves that we're not in this on our own, but we have a group of people. However, in the area of diversity, there is no main leadership. There's no leadership saying, this is the way we want it. This is what we want from the government. And this is what we need the government to do for us as a people. There is no leadership right now saying that in unity, okay? Because again, the commanded blessings on unity. We don't have that. Other nationalities have that. Asian American, Indians, I mean, just every single Native American organizations, they have unity. And that's why they progress in this government contracting arena and in any other arena, financial arenas. I mean, all of the arenas that they want to advance in. But we have to have unity. We have to operate in unity, but we got to find that leadership that's going to propel us in those areas that we need to go into to become contractors.
Let's call a spade a spade. Let's not call it an agricultural instrument.
Right.
What is diversity? When the historic, this is what I use. The US Census has two races, white and black.
Yeah.
Hispanic is cultural, Asian is geographic.
Yes.
Right? So based on the United States federal government, if you're not white, you're black. Hispanics consider themselves white, the brown-skinned ones. Right? Asian says that because they are not black, therefore they must be white. So when you look at those calculations, the numbers are skewed. Let's talk black business.
Yes.
Let's not call it diversity. Let's not call it inclusion. Let's call it black business.
Oh, I'm for that.
Okay. So when we talk about minority, we're talking about black business. We're not talking about the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce,
That's right.
which is also part of the minority business, but they separate.
That's right.
The women business, SBA, they separate. So all of these groups separate. We as black people need to separate. And, what is reverse discrimination with 400 years? There isn't such a thing. We want what we want, right? The black caucuses, all of those black titled need to understand that everybody else is piggybacking on the two races, white or black. Until the census changes their definition, there's only two races in America, white or black. So if we're looking at any structural organization, this is how I see it. First come, first serve. I'm Jamaican. Black Americans have been here from the beginning of America's civilization.
Yeah.
Therefore, they should come first. The order of how you came here is the order in which you should be served. Like
Alfred, let me can I because therein lies the problem.
Yes.
The problem is we perceive that America belongs to somebody else and they got to add us in.
Mm-hmm.
We are America.
Mm-hmm.
It's mine. It is yours. It is theirs. It is not something that somebody else owns and they got to give us a piece of it. I own it already. Okay.
Yeah, we built it.
The fact that I've been deprived of it doesn't mean that I don't own it.
Yes.
Manhattan Beach, when they stole Manhattan Beach from black folk, they owe that back, right?
Yes.
When the Homestead Act went around and we were not in the position to make the decisions and land was given to everybody else, we don't talk about the real issue here, which is reparation. Okay. Well, stop. We keep talking about opportunity as though it's infinite and all there is out there, we got to go get our piece. That's not true. There's only one asset in the world The one asset in the world that is inextricably needed to advance economically, and that is land. And believe it or not, nobody making no more of it. So the opportunities are not infinite. Somebody who got too much got to give some back. Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
I just wanted to talk about what Mr. Isaacs stated about the different races. And if you look at the Baltimore City program, they do identify Hispanic and specifically like Portuguese, which I found very interesting because Portuguese were some of the majority of the slave owners. And so we have a program that actually includes Portuguese and Hispanic. I know New York, they had some legislation and they had actually case law that supported that that is not a minority group. So yeah, it is black or white, and Hispanic isn't a race. You know, I am from Panamanian descent, but I'm a black. You know, I'm black. I'm a black woman. So there is the Hispanic, but I'm not seen as a Hispanic. I can't erase it. You know, you see a black woman, and that's where the discrimination occurs and how I look, and that's a difference. And so these programs need to be updated.
If Hispanic is a culture, let's identify them based on their culture. Central Latin America and the Caribbean. So if you come from Spain, you're white. Read how it is described. Portuguese is Brazil. That's it. That is it. They speak a dialect of Portuguese.
But so when you check Hispanic, you have to check black or white, you know, Caucasian or African descent. And so,
the brown skin is white. I'm telling you that as a fact. I remember I wasn't born here. I came here. I applied for my Social Security card. My parents didn't do it. Most Americans did not do their own. They don't even put the descriptions in there anymore. They don't tell you what it is. And that's for another time and space. But I followed the instructions, and Danny knows the story. But Hispanic is a culture based on a location. So let's define it like that. The title Black African, I'm from the Caribbean. My country is 99% black, but culturally I'm different. Do I qualify for anything? No.
Listen, the program was enacted in Maryland not based upon who was thought to be qualified. It was based upon the votes that would get to pass it. I was there in 1978 when House Bill 64 was drafted. I worked with Decatur Trotter and Bob Douglas from East Baltimore. And I'm telling you, I argued my heart out saying, look, this is for black folk. You know what the response was? If we don't put white women in it, we won't get the votes. You know what? And my answer is, if we don't get what we need, the hell with it.
Thank you. But you see, the problem is, okay, again, give you a quick example of that. Maryland has a woman program, but they are certified as females. Definition: sex-bearing member of a species. Woman, adult, female, human. They are trying to get no. Look it up. They are trying to get the certification changed, but they cannot make the statement. Female is what they used to call black women in the past. Female. They never call them a woman. No.
So how does all of that fit into today?
What the esteemed lawyer is saying? Because I have gone back and looked at all of these things to find out where am I. If you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you are. 3 points to a direction: where you were, where you are, where you want to go. So what I'm saying is that let's talk about black business. Let's not fluff it. Let's talk about black business. So what can we do to promote black businesses? What can we do to help black business? Where is the barriers in the system? The barriers in the system is in the system.
Absolutely.
If you look in the system, you'll find it if you want to find it. I tell people that, and I've said it to Danny, a lot of people are too close to the forest to see the trees. and I look at the forest to find the trees. So I look on the outside. And I look on things that if this is done, if A plus B equals C, basic, did operations management in college. If you change any part of A and you change any part of B, you will never get C. The question is, which is the one of the two is the easiest to get?
Okay, so
right.
Alfred, we get ready to steal the steering wheel back from you. Tamara, take us on home. What did so Tamara, we got to go through the vocabulary list, at least some of the terms. This is college. This is Contractors College, so that we can and I don't know that we ever got the question asked to the panel of how do we measure the success of our MBEs. I think what I heard is we don't have a way of measuring the success, the growth, the development of our MBEs, particularly on the local and state level.
Yeah,
Cynthia?
That's correct.
that's correct.
So how do you improve something if you don't even know how it's going? And so you don't know how it's doing now, so how do you, I mean, what I understand, and it's a good point that Cynthia made, that we don't trust the organizations that are responsible for this. And again, for me, I feel that locally in Baltimore City, we haven't even enforced what we already have, but we're talking about doing all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And that takes time. So what I see is that's kicking the can down the road more. And it's like, well, we haven't even done this stuff yet, but we're creating this and it sounds nice and it sounds fluffy and it sounds good, but you're not even enforcing what you already have. So again, just go back to what you have and do that. Actually be able to measure it, because you don't even know how you're doing. Maybe you're doing well, maybe you're doing really bad, but you can't see that. So if you don't know, how do you know where you're going if you don't even know where you're starting? And that's just the challenge for me. And that's why we don't trust our local authorities, because they keep selling us fluff, buzzwords, what's hip to, but there's no substance to what's being said or done. There's no action. There's no action with what you have. So why are you creating something else? So we just don't know. And so for me, I think it takes action. The solution to it all, what Mr. Isaacs was saying, well, how do we fix any of this? The solution is to do what you're supposed to do, and stick to it, be consistent. Every 4 years, we get new plans, new grandiose ideas, and that's setting us back, because it takes more than 4 years to do those things. And so you've had laws like the MBE laws in the city that have been in place for over, 40, 30 years. They've never even enforced all of it. Why don't you start there?
You know what they haven't had? They haven't had this diverse panel holding them accountable. And we're going to do this for 3 more weeks. And who knows, we might be able to do it even longer. Cynthia Washington, any final thoughts? And thank you for participating. We only asked you for a half and you gave us the whole 2 hours. We've known each other, I guess, maybe almost 20 years or so. But what I'm always impressed with is you continually educate yourself, and then you turn around and educate the community, because if your consumer is not educated, they won't really understand the value of your product.
True.
Thoughts are, we took their system and we made it work for us. To separate, I believe, is going to be harder than taking their systems and making them work for us. And we have taken their system. We have a training called the Advantage. And it's just about having the advantage over their system, taking what they already have in place, just like Tamara said, and making it work for us. If you think about it, to go back years and take ourselves out of that system is going to be so much harder than looking at their system and seeing how it could work for us. That's all I did 25 years ago. I looked at their system and I said, that's not working for us. And let me point out, I'm talking about diversity, but you got to speak their language. You got to say, in diversity, this is what you set those goals for diversity. But here is the diversity breakdown. At the bottom of that poll are African Americans. We got to find some way to bring them up. in this effort. And the effort, again, I'm going to say this again, they have to be qualified. Otherwise, they can turn them away. If they're not qualified, we got to put more emphasis on technical assistance and getting them ready for contracting than we do getting them into contracting. Because getting them ready,
Say that again.
we have a larger pool to play the game.
Say that again.
I said we have to put more emphasis on technical assistance and preparing them for contracting than we do getting them in the contracting door, because if they're not prepared, they will turn them away. And we have to do that. And let me just say this, that's our focus. This state and local government, they have funding for this. Also, they have, again, all of the stimulus money, but before the stimulus money, the state and local government, they have DBE goals. When the federal government gives them money, they have DBE goals, and they have to meet those goals with minorities and women and veterans. But we got to know their system so that we can make it work for us. And that's my goal, and I'm going to keep pushing that way because it works. $750 million later, it works. And we've turned agencies like PIH and HUD from 40% minority to 99% minority just from qualifying the vendors and taking them in there. We got to get us qualified. We can no longer sit by and say, give us our share, and then we get in the door and we're not qualified.
And we have to stay there.
And we have to stay.
Oh, you can stay there. The contract is the hardest part of a contract. Keeping it.
Oh, maintaining it. That's
yes.
right.
Yes.
That's why we have contract management training, because you have to keep the contract. You got to grow the contract. Once you're in there, grow the contract. You're in there. You can now meet the people who are buying what you sell and sell yourself to them and get more business. We have more repeat business than we do business. So you got to keep the business. Yeah.
Cynthia, one thing you haven't talked about is companies like yours passing the ball, helping empower others. It's one thing to create an opportunity for oneself, but how do we help empower others in our community? And we're not expecting you to mentor every company out there, but is there a smaller company that you get to mentor?
Oh, there are always, well, let me say this. I can mentor every company out there. We've been in technology for a long time. Our system is web-based. The government came onto our platform this year and we doubled in business, but we've been, a web-based platform. So we can, the World Wide Web allows us to speak to every business out there and train every business. We are going to start sessions where we train, but we need the government's participation in that. So that we're both at the table and they're aware of the opportunities that we're giving to these business owners who are qualified. Again, getting them qualified is easy for us. Now, we have a system. It's easy. Getting them qualified, getting them in that door is easy. We got to get them the opportunity to again, have the government at the table. That's why I asked her about public-private partnerships, because those have worked best for us, where we're able to come in with that agency. Now they know that agency is serious. They're serious about meeting those goals. They're serious about including them in their process. They're serious. But we have a liaison like WCI who's been fighting for them for 25 years at the table, saying we're gonna hold them accountable. We're gonna make sure they do what they said they were gonna do. And that's what's necessary. And I've seen that work over and over and over around the nation.
Okay. Alfred, any final thoughts?
First step to every generation, first step to any destination is important, because you're one step less. So as long as you move forward and not backward, you're on the way. The problem is there has to be a destination. We can't just keep children of Israel spun around in trying to get a destination. We just need a destination. But
the destination is to create economic empowerment for our communities. Period.
Which represents what?
Which represents
the standard of living increasing in the quality, something you can measure. We can measure quality of life because the government measures that. Quality of life. Did the money stay here on health? You must see those numbers the state has.
Let me tell you what that looks like. That looks like us being able to acquire that economic empowerment and pass it on to our children. That's what it looks like. That's generational. And being able to show them that process for becoming an entrepreneur, acquiring contracts, acquiring properties, acquiring the necessary tools that they need to continue on in their process, but then to leave that generational wealth to another human being.
So they can build on it.
Pardon me?
So they can build on it.
That's right. That's right. It's all about creating the generational wealth. There's no need for us to do this for us today, you know, and it ends with us. We got to keep those generational, those generations to come in their mind is going to be building. It's going to be having economic empowerment. It's not going to be, what am I going to wear? Or what am I going to drive? Or it's not going to be any of that. It's going to be, how do I build economic wealth so that I'm able to continue on and leave that for generations to come. My husband and I have done that. We're going to continue to do that. We're going to teach our kids that it only matters that you acquire something that you can leave to the next generation, period. And that's the outcome. And that's what we have not been focused on as a people.
Cynthia, excellent words. Tamara Brown, you got the final thoughts.
Well, it was great much today from a lot of your speakers, and I'm just looking forward for the next 3 weeks after this, where we can give some more definitions and terms and educate, because I believe it begins with education and just knowing, and I hope everyone goes into their local government, SBA, federal, and just learn about what's there, what's out there, learn about the laws, read it, because education is key. Someone can't tell you, you know, the water is green if you've been there and you know it's blue, you know, so just, you know, you have to know and understand the rules and the regulation mandating these programs and ask questions.
Good deal.
Amazing.
We've had a lot of comments. We will be back next week. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name's Donnie Glover. Do have a new book coming out in the next couple of weeks, I Am Black Wall Street. But more than that, it's really a pleasure to maintain these relationships. Albert, I'm really proud of you, because they don't know you can do the straight takeover, and you calmed yourself today.
Well, you know, it's the fact that, you know, in historical, the unruly slaves were dumped in Jamaica. Do I need to say more?
We love Jamaica. My name's Donnie Glover. Thank you all for joining us here on Contractors College. We'll be back Monday morning, 10 a.m. with the BlackUSA.News morning show, and we have programming every evening, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Thank you all. Have a safe weekend. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Stay away from people who don't do that. Stay beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, Donnie.
Thank you.